In this section, we'll talk about margin of error. And margin of error is used when you take a sample from a population. So when a random sample of size n is taken from a population, the margin of error is given by this formula. Margin of error is equal to plus or minus 1 over the square root of n, where n is the sample size taken from the population. It says, in a survey of 1,011 people, 52% said that television is their main source of news. What's the margin of error for the survey? So we'll set up the equation. Margin of error is equal to plus or minus 1 divided by the square root of n. That's the number of people in the sample. Here it's 1,011, and we're just going to calculate that really fast, which gives us plus or minus 0.0314, which is plus or minus 3.14%. So what that means is, that's the answer for number A, what's the margin of error for the survey? But then it says, given interval that's likely to contain the exact percent of all people who use television as their main source of news. So the margin of error really tells us how much it changes from the percent that we actually measure. So really, we take 52% minus 3.14% and 52% plus 3.14%, and that's going to tell us the interval that's correct. So we get 48.86% and 55.14%. So because the sample size is 1,011 people, we can only be this sure that's actually what the survey is telling us. That's likely to contain the exact percent of people who use television as their main source of news. It's easy to find the margin of error, but it's a little trickier to find the number of people. So it says a polling company conducts a poll for a US presidential election. How many people did the company survey if the margin of error is plus or minus 5%? So if it's plus or minus 5%, we can set it up into the formula 0.05 plus minus 0.05 equals 1 over the square root of the number of people. That's also plus or minus. But because it's plus or minus on both sides, we don't need to care about that. We can just write 0.05 equals 1 over the square root of n. And of course, I got 0.05 because it comes from 5%. Now we just need to solve for the square root of n. Let me rewrite this so it looks a little bit nicer. So what we're going to do is first square both sides to get rid of that square root. So we have 1 squared is 1. Square root of n squared is just n. And 0.05 squared, let me calculate that, is 0.0025. Now we just need to solve for n. So because n's the denominator, we multiply both sides by n. Then we have n times 0.0025 equals 1. Divide by 0.0025 on both sides. We have n is equal to whatever 1 divided by square root of 0.0025 is, which is 400. So they polled about 400 people. The last type of question is this. It says, a survey claims the percent of a city's residents that favor building a new football stadium is likely between 52.3% and 61.7%. How many people were surveyed? So it's giving us a range. So from that range, we can find the margin of error by finding the difference and dividing it by 2. So 61.7, that's a 1, minus 52.3 gives us 9.4%. That's that is something we need to divide by 2 to find the margin of error. So the margin of error is 4.7%. Because what that tells us is there was some number in the middle, and we subtracted 4.7% to get to 52.3 and added 4.7% to get to 61.7. So the range is 9.4%, so the margin of error is plus minus 4.7%. Now that we know that, we can find out how many people are surveyed pretty easily. We just set it into the formula, 0.047 equals 1 over square root of n. Square both sides to get 1 over n is equal to 0.047 squared. Got to use my calculator for that. 0.002209. 0.0022, I can't remember what it is. 09. multiply times n on both sides, divide by this number, and that should give us the answer, which is 1 divided by that number. It says 452.69. Of course, n is the number of people, they're the residents of the city, so we can't really have a decimal because it doesn't make sense to have 0.693 of a person. So we're just going to round that up to 453 and say they surveyed about 453 people. And of course, this is all relative anyways. The margin of error is like a best guess. This is all just a best guess anyways. So they surveyed about 453